see how this tests out and goes out and plans out. Here's hoping, here's hoping. Cool. So, updating or improving the stream a little. So we at least have a plan this time, and I've kind of reckoned with how much I don't care about certain things. I just don't naturally care a lot about certain things. So we're going to do a quick rundown through how last week, week 4, went for LAC and LCS. I'll give my little takes on that. I think most other League of Legends esports in the West talk shows have kind of hammered to death anything they can. Anything I'm going to highlight isn't going to be that important or captivating, but we'll see. Then I'll just throw out my predictions real quick for both leagues, and then we'll probably do some dives into some things that I'm really enjoying and highlighting as just being like an outsider of outsider for how the league's going, how that community in LA is. Because I don't watch enough of the LEC stuff, or they don't have a lot of talk shows to really deduce much drama, I guess, or how people are working together and stuff. So let's go into LEC. The Friday match, Origin versus Mad Lions. Fucker. So for that one, I just saw an easy outdraft. They sort of got surprised by Nuke Duck's Ornn mid with the tank, which I guess is like a really good show for Nuke Duck to at least have more versatility, even though he can't really show himself as a incredibly dominant player, at least as much as he would like to highlight that he is. And as much as the EU praises him all to death. From there, yeah, they just had like game insurance with Karthus and Aphelios. Like, I think this is actually the Mad Lions having an NA issue of not being able to really like win it early. But when you put in an Ezreal Yuumi bot lane, you're looking to scale for the Yuumi's benefit for poke and heals, especially with how broken those heals have been. And Karthus, Aphelios, and Ornn kind of outscale anything one champion's gonna do, even if it's a cat. Excel SK. I think I was just fall apart early. Was it 3v2 set Cassidon bot lane? Into the Baron, into a trash team fight. Trick gets caught at the end. And they didn't have anything for like wave clear, so that was like SK just sort of got botched on that one. I believe is how that played out. They need some real wave clear. No one's mentioning Sivir. I guess she's dog, according to everyone right now. But if you're going to have a Cassidon for your mid laner, you're going to need something from another lane to provide the wave clear. And Cassidon has never been that. Fnatic, and so that's XL's win there. Fnatic beat Vitality. Rogue beat Schalke, but that was actually pretty close. If I'm everything serving, Schalke almost had something, but Rogue pulled a massive outplay in Baron, and the Aatrox just runs them over. Like there's just no appeal. Like it's just a hyper focus on Baron. Like we get the Baron, we win, but they all die basically. The surprise match of that Forbidden called actually, that what was that? Yeah, on Elitists, Misfits beat out G2, and mid lost a few roams. Vunder got camped, and this is where Caps just shits the bed outright. Yankos does everything he can, but Razor K just goes crazy. So that was a really interesting match to watch, but I think that's Misfits really taking advantage of it, and all those rookies really leveling up, and Forbidden like doing what he really wants to do. Last year on the Misfits roster was just a shit show of too much complacency because there's too many big names. Like I don't think it's been mentioned often enough when it comes to these super teams when they're made, is that unless you have something that's like G2 or even TL where everyone's kind of coming together for the same goal, like as friends do, like friends coming together for a goal, as opposed to just a company like a team saying, let's get these 5 players, put them together, and win. like doesn't really work out that way. And I think that's probably what the biggest issue with Misfits was, is that they just had no working relationships beforehand. They were just, hey, we're now coworkers and someone's going to carry and it's probably going to be one of you guys, and then no one carries. Um, but yeah, so G2 gets dumpstered. I didn't get I got the impression with the Sona pick that that's supposed to just roam around the map at all times by herself and just like kind of be an extra ganker, for I guess a 1-3-1 comp, but I would think that Sona grouping like we had last season would have been the standard pick, so I'm not 100% sure on that. But G2 shits the bed. Um, I think Misfits win against Vitality. I did not look these up. Uh, so Schalke beats G2, and I think the loss of Forgiven is the best thing to happen to that team. Um, and maybe the new ADC is like chatting away much more than Forgiven apparently is quite mute. But I think Schalke is going to be looking really optimistic going forward, but they're not going to get to playoffs. Not their start. Them and Vitality are just going to have to turn spring into a wash, even though it doesn't really matter. Um, I don't have the notes for XL, Origin, or Fnatic versus Mad Lions, but who wins, who wins. You can check the standings for that one. Um, yeah, just don't have anything for that. So LCS, um, Immortals beat TL, and this is the first one where Xmithy bodies Brox with that Lee Sin, Nautilus, Sejuani play over there by Gromp in the new bushes. Um, I think Immortals are actually a lot better than what people think they are, but there is a good point in that there's no clear firepower unless some of these veterans are really going to step up and become more than what we think they are, like Soaz, um, or Ica just somehow stops being just a moot point. I really think Double Lift, though, is the biggest weak link of TL, and we'll get into that later. Um, so the C9 TSM match, Felios and Zaire banned, so that actually pinches Kabe more than I think people want to hint at, because I don't think MF is as good as anyone is really prioritizing it. I don't like it. I think I'd have to check stats, but I think all of TSM's wins have been when Kabe is not on MF. When he's on a real ADC that I can actually scale out a bit and actually have good auto attack damage, then they can do something. But the MF just doesn't make it work there. Broken Blade gets a Kali, but it just doesn't have the same mobility it used to, and he just doesn't take over the game with it. Like, he's just neutralized about it. And Bjerg, this is when Bjerg has the Renekton, which is just a shit idea. This is not Last Worlds, where sort of Sojin is just broken and it lets Renekton become a button-smashing monster. I think TSM has had this issue consistently when Biofrost in the first few weeks, and then Bjerg at the Herald play when C9's going back into their blue buff. Bjerg just gets ahead of the play and just gets blown up, and then it's just like they had 2 fights at Rift, they chased too hard, and that's it. Like, people like Bjerg just trying too hard, or maybe Dardoch trying too hard. So like the same issues as week 1 and 2 in terms of that, of just not timing your chases well together. And I don't sense Bjerg expected to be blown up that easily, because he pops ult and then goes in and they just all together just blow him up like with ult on. So I think there's just a really bad draft that played out there. Golden Guardians versus CLG, they win that pretty easy. I think the big things that I would like to take out of this is that Hanser looks to be the biggest leader piece on this, outside of a closer just being like the best playing member and probably one of the best junglers out of the entire league outside of Blabber. Keith's gonna be hot and cold. I think that's a note I made, but I just don't. I think GG has a good mindset to be playing long term with him. But yeah, we'll hope he doesn't feed, basically. And go. I have no idea. Golden Glue punishing Crown and how at least their lane matchup went, but Crown just got replaced by Belter, and I think that's hilarious because I've never been hot on Belter, but this switch is pretty hilarious and kind of fantastic. Um, Dig beats 100 Thieves, but whatever. 100 Thieves is just kind of falling into the dumpster at this point. Like, I think the big flame for 100 Thieves is going to be at Papa Smithy for Ryoma, and the sense of nepotism that comes from that mid laner from the Oceania, the Oceanic region from the OPL. Because I think I think NA is slowly getting towards realizing that either homegrown talent, maybe imported LAC members, are kind of the best thing. And like Cloud9's made the best example of that because they have their two import slots filled, but everyone else there is in a like born here in America. Like they're not an NA resident, they are homegrown NA talent, and they are dumpstering the entire league. Um, so I think 100 Thieves, they're not in the same situation as CLG is with just a shit ass mid laner, but they are having a problem in like having more than one carry really, because they have Cody Sun back on that team, but Cody Sun is now kind of, I'm losing all the hotness I had for him at the end of last season because I was basically lauding that Cody Sun was going to be able to compete with Double Lift, which isn't a big statement right now because they're both kind of being doggy on account of like Cody Sun looked really good on Clutch because of Kaisa and Zaya and being able to just clean up the team fights. Like that just made him look really good. He'd stay safe long enough in the team fight to wipe it, but now it's just not going as hard and as far as it should. Let me see here. Let me just double check. I'm talking about the right thing. I'm not being stupid. 100 Thieves. Yeah, Cody Sun bot. Yeah, so I'm not stupid. Yeah, I'm not misrecalling that. So yeah, so when it comes to 100 Thieves, like they have pieces that you'd think would really pull it out, but they're just slowly falling into the dumpster right now. Um, and then we go to Sunday. Golden Guardians beats Dig. Um, I think Hanser's their big carry at this point in terms of even shot calling. You can check the comms where they're pushing bot lane, and Hanser's the one calling that all the way through. Good news is Golden Glee doesn't feed. Oh wait, yeah, now I'm recalling that. Cause where's that golden? Yeah, Golden Glue punishing Crown as because this is the Cassiopeia match for Golden Glue, and Golden Glue is weird. If you watch his face, he's actually really scared at the end when they're about to push that and win, where he's barely alive, and or at least he feels like he's barely alive. When it feels like his view is just so focused on how he almost died instead of looking at the whole picture and being able to recognize like how the entire team fight is going and how many threats there aren't against him. Um, so that was just a little thing. So, but in this Dig GG match, this actually works out really well because they pull something that is something split feed that is split the map likes with side lanes. And the best thing is that Golden Glue on Diana doesn't feed. I think Diana has her own issues in that she needs those first few items and she's got the binary issue, but to really like pop. So what really that game ends up winning is that Golden Glue goes in at the dragon fight, ults to bring everyone together, and then FBI just gets to flame everyone as Aphelios and blow them up and just win the fight and off he goes. So, you know, there you go. And Hanser has kind of probably turned into the best player on that team all around, and I kind of want to say that's from his time on TSM back when, because he's with like I'm going like the peak TSM with Double Lift, Biofrost and Svenskeren, because if you watch the Thorn interview with Bjergsen, he highlights Hanser as a very proud and wanting to go far player. I think this is the time in Hanser's career where he is choosing on the shittiest Oregon outside of CLG in the LCS to just push hard to win. He's going to make the shot calls. He's going to do what he can to carry with the Aatrox, and he's just going to push for the win. So I think he's really doing that, which is actually really nice to see him develop beyond being like a dutiful top laner and playing tank Maokai for the entire time he's with TSM, and wanting to play the carries, but going into even making like the late game shot calls, the final fight shot calls. So that's actually just really good to at least see what you can from the comms catches. CLG versus TL. TL gets the win. Yay for Broxa. Yeah, and 6A just gets dicked by Double Lift. So Double Lift turns it on for like then. And then the TSM FlyQuest, which is really disappointing. But I think if the coaching staff can catch the optimistic side of this early on, this whole match actually plays out way like TSM had their shit together so well on this, and they were doing so well for executing just executing this very complex comp, and I think they still have that issue with their mid game, but everything looks so good until Ornn's broken ass is allowed through the draft and is allowed to scale and get everyone items, and then there's no chance. So like I think this match shows how good TSM can be and how good I expect them to be if they keep working at this. Because I would have come away from that match being really, really happy with how well they played out every piece of it up until I want to say it's the drag fight that they lost, and then it just allowed. Then they lost. Yeah, they lost. It was the Mountain Drake, the FlyQuest got, and then there's no chance. There's this was it Kabe is not building anything to tank bust. There is no Grievous Wound, so the Yumi is able to heal everything up and just even pocket the Ornn, and he just never dies. So I think like 2 adjustments in draft and TSM take that, but I also think a more well-developed mid-game equals they just dumpster that out, and it doesn't matter about the Ornn, because even the next match was Immortals versus EG, and Immortals had Soaz on Ornn, but EG just rolled so hard that they still get the W. Like, Ornn does not equal like a guaranteed win, but you have to push hard and push to win early. What is this? Monday, FlyQuest wins against 100 Thieves, no big deal, and C9 beats EG. So like nothing too special there. So I think there's is an interesting batch to at least look at in terms of how things are going. Standings. What are the standings now? There we go. So, standings, top 2 pieces. Everyone's expecting Immortals to fall down. I think that's believable if you're comparing firepower ability, but I think they're still just gonna brain it out. There could be like old SK Gaming, where like there's no big highlighted player, but they can still do it. And they're holding number 2 right now with FlyQuest. And I wanted to be down on FlyQuest, but they're holding it out. And Power of Evil is like number 1 in damage mid laners. TSM Dig and Golden Guardians are hanging out in 4th place. I really expect TSM to turn this around. Golden Guardians, I kind of expect them to keep climbing. They're in the middle of the pack, like kind of where you expect. So like they should peter out, and it's kind of a question of what they can do against the next roundup. What are we looking at? EGTL, 100 Thieves down in the 7th spot, and Counterlaunch Gaming way at the bottom. I just don't see CLG making it to playoffs. Like, they don't matter. Like, the pole belter bring in is hilarious, and it's desperate, and like if it gets them any wins, I just don't think it matters. LEC has, Origin, G2, Misfits at the top. Misfits just on fire. Like, I wish I remembered who Fnatic lost to or Rogue lost to get their 3rd losses. But I think Misfits is like really underrated right now, because we have the same situation as we've had previously. Like the Misfits from a few years ago that took SKT to Game 5 at Worlds. We have one really awesome veteran in Fabiven who is nowhere near washed up. He's hungry and ready, and he can understand and articulate the game better than most players can. And he's got 4 rookies that he's just been developing and getting up to where, like, I think even if Caps doesn't shit the bed in their match, Misfits still take that game to the limit and even probably win it. Um, wow, Vitality is 0-8. That's so sad. Um, that's the only like real breakdown I can really give for LEC. So now let's go to predictions. So LEC predictions for week 5. I've got Misfits beating Mad Lions, Schalke beating Vitality, G2 beating Excel, OG beating SK, Rogue. I think Rogue's going to beat Fnatic. Because I think Larson's going to be way more proactive than Nemesis, and that'll just break it apart. I think Rogue's also far more willing to play G2's kind of game. Let's see. And just maybe even like ignore objectives to the level that G2 does just to get advantages on the other side. So like if Nemesis does go for the Veigar, it's not going to matter. Or if he tries to play too safe, it's not going to matter. He's just going to give it away, and Larson Rogue's just going to take it. SK beats Vitality on Saturday. XL beats Schalke. That'll be really interesting to see if Schalke actually upsets XL. Because if that upset happens, Forgiven can just like go ahead and get his colostomy bag and retire. And it starts to actually change the tone for how Summer looks. Because that's basically like that's an early turnaround compared to how Rogue was last season, where Rogue has like a dog spring, and then they have an awesome summer, and they get gypped out of going to Worlds. So if Schalke actually turn this around, like start turning that around against XL on Saturday, then the entire league looks way more competitive with that part. Misfits, I think Misfits are going to take Rogue. I think Forgiven's now hungry. He's knocked out Perks in G2, and now he's looking at like a cocky Larson and just thinking, I'm just going to run this kid over. So I think Misfits will take that, and G2 will beat Mad Lions because we're expecting them to get back into form. OG versus Fnatic. I think actually I'm going to change my prediction. I had Fnatic winning this, but I'm going to give it to OG on account of Nuke Duck is showing way more flexibility than Nemesis. So I'm giving it mid-diff for the win. And also I'd give it Xerxes over Selfmade. Yeah, I think Xerxes and Selfmade. If there's jungle diff, Xerxes over Selfmade, only on account of just even more flexibility. Because they're the only LEC team that's really brought in the Karthus. And whether Fnatic bans that out or whatnot, then there's just resource given. Like, OG is showing way more threat than Fnatic in that realm. Saturday, TSM beats 100 Thieves unless they throw it. Let's see here. C9 beats CLG. Immortals beats Dig. Because I just don't think there's... I think there's an IQ issue in Dig. And I kind of want to blame Grig, or at least I want to flame Grig, because I just think he just got hyped on TSM, was given the fair shot, and just shot everywhere. Like, it's hard to like a player that you feel shat on your team's ability to have a good year, especially when they had a good spring. So call it like a long grudge, but I think Dig has the issue of perhaps having too many voices, and I think it goes well early when you're formative and you're in the first 2 weeks, and Afromoog gets to have his say, but then it gets later, and maybe Froggen and Hooney's voices get a little louder, or maybe Grig's voice gets a little louder, and the team just kind of loses that synergy that the early days gave because they all were just willing to follow one voice, and now it just falls apart. So I think Immortals is well disciplined with their at least European mindset and Xmithy to kind of win that part of it. I think FlyQuest will beat Golden Guardians, as I think Golden Guardians might actually peak here at this point because they're middle of the pack and it just kind of feels like where they're supposed to be, because they just, unless Golden Glue shows more, because the thing with Golden Glue now is that he's not dog shit. He's just acceptable, which puts him at the same level as like Pobelter uh, and Tanner, and not Dardoch, Tanner. Fuck, I forgot his name already. So it just puts him at like an average in a mid laner, um, and even lower than that, just because he's not been a critical or a win condition for Golden Guardians. So, so I think FlyQuest will just take that. Viper's doing his job. Otherwise, he's not standout unless he's on his Riven. Um, and I think PoE, if PoE is not going to play aggressive, but I think mid diff is the biggest discrepancy here, and it may just very well win just the late game team fight, the later game team fight. Um, Sunday, EG, TL. TL's getting their shit together. They've got Broxa for 2 weeks now, so that should go well for TL. C9 will beat Immortals because they're untouchable. Golden Guardians will beat 100 Thieves, with 100 Thieves falling apart, or at least not showing signs of life. FlyQuest to beat CLG, unless somehow Pobelter turns into a Smurf. And TL will beat Dig, TSM will beat EG. And I think this TSM EG will be a really good indicator of it, mostly on reflecting the standings. Because EG is one win behind TSM, so they're close in terms of standings. So if TSM continue their on-stage practice of high execution comps, and they have not resolved their decision making in the mid game and how to really push for the win and extend their, like, not even get the extended lead because they had like a 10,000 gold lead on FlyQuest. Just make the calls that are going to win the game. And I think there's, I think I'm going to have forever issues with players that have been on teams for so long that are lauded as the best, and they actually become the biggest hampering to the team. So I think that can jump into that last piece alludes to a Bjergsen double lift issue with regard to Bjergsen has been in TSM too long, I think, and double lift has been winning for too long, and it's been on TL for so long that there is no challenge. There's no challenge really for either of them. There is a want to go to Worlds and do well, but I think right now Doublelift is so apathetic to winning, to trying, that he's the biggest problem on the team. Like, forget the jungle issue, Fire, Broxa, jet lag, whatever. Doublelift doesn't care enough, doesn't have the mindset that's actually going to get him anywhere far in the international scene. It's just not. He's been too broken too much, maybe, but I just don't. I've never been a fan of Doublelift to the extent that others are, because I've never read or felt that he had the mindset, the pedigree, the grit, the piece about him that equals I'm gonna win this bitch. Bjergsen has come across as that historically. Perks has that 10 out of 10. Like most of like all of G2 has that. And there's just something about how Doublelift is and interacts that just doesn't communicate it. It doesn't sell me on him being someone that's gonna go to Worlds and I'm gonna win this bitch. Cloud9 is playing like it and acting like it, and even Jack-X is like, we're gonna fucking win this bitch. Like, we're gonna go, we're gonna do well, and we're gonna do our thing. And I think Doublelift puts too much on his shoulders, and he's Doublelift is a consistent player, but when it comes to his mindset about the big issues, especially the international issues, I think his emotions just rack it too much, and they infest his ability to compete at that level. Like, he still has stage fright when he gets on an international level, and I think he's the biggest problem right now on Team Liquid, outside of like their jungle issues, because there's just no real desire to win another split. Like, he's probably the most willing to sandbag, while Jensen, by comparison, he does nothing but work and work to and play to win. Like that's his whole mindset. Like the day Jensen sandbags is the day like a hurricane is striking California. That's like the only reason this happens. So I think that's like the biggest issue that TL have is actually Double Lift's mindset and this, the rock solid confidence of going to be successful on a global scale. Like he can want it and he can have had the historical hunger or even the current hunger, but there's just something that's just so missing, especially with as established and kind of old as a player as he is. You know, I'd have higher confidence of Fabevin or Bjergsen or Aframu. They have better they look to have better resolve in how they carry themselves and how they communicate themselves to go to Worlds and actually like we're gonna win this bitch. Like we're not gonna get overwhelmed or anything like that. You know, stone cold killer shit. Um, I think the O2 for G2 is just like maybe kind of a wake up call, especially for Caps, because he was super consistent, like going through Worlds. But I think they're still kind of chilling. They have the big fight of, you know, having gone to Worlds to finals and not burning out. So I'm not worried about them. But if they bollocks this weekend, it'll be concerning. It'll be very concerning. Um, I had something I wanted to break down with TSM psychology and conflicting play styles, and I think this is a. I think is a. I can't remember what I was referring to that. I think there's a big forwardness for Broken Blade, for Dardoch, and a more controlled style of play from Bjergsen, and it conflicts hard enough to make them throw. Like if this speculation is true, Bjerg decides to be initiative and on the Renekton and then throws that Cloud9 match like hard. Um, so yeah. What else? The culture issue. Um, I think the simple thing is that Bjergsen, because I wanted to make like a big bit about this, but I'm just gonna make what I can out of it right now. Bjergsen should have left TSM before the season began. I think the re-signing that he did was a big issue, and I think it it paints him far more complacent than it should. It the equity exchange, the extension of the contract. I think at this point, either you are so committed to making North America successful that you'll never leave it, and that's like the community play. But if you're really looking to go to Worlds and go as far as you ever could, and you care about winning and like and making that mark, like going that far, that hard, like I don't I don't understand in the competitive nature part, because I understand why they would do it for the money, why anyone is not like trying to be an import over in the LEC. And I think you could make a very easy claim that like we're dog shit, so like no LEC team's gonna pick up any NA talent. But Bjergsen is like one of the examples of like go home, like go back to Europe and take the fuck over there, like have a team built around you over there and see if that actually yields more international success, actually goes further somewhere, because you could have the same Sven goal, um, and like beat Sven on that in a fun way. But you know, I'm fascinated to think about how Bjergsen would do in Fabiven's place or in Larson's place, and how that either improves or clarifies the long term TSM issue of jungles being neutered and made to just serve Bjerg. So I don't think it does anything good for his development to be on the same team for this long through this many iterations. And while he says repeatedly that he trusts Reggie, I just think that he's about to turn into himself into an asset that has been somewhere so long that it has become devalued. Um, so I'm kind of wishing Bjerg would have left. Like, it could have made TSM better, but I think it would have made him better. And this is where I think Double Lift is starting to come into the same issue of you've been somewhere for so long with so much success, and the best thing to revitalize your passion is to go somewhere else. And frankly, like, I kind of want to swing G2 as a good example of that, but I think Forbidden and the Misfits is the best example of that, of a big name mid laner getting a rookie squad and training them up like super fast, just giving them every bit you have, and then they end up like, right now top 2 in the league. So that's my take on that. Final thing we'll jump on, and I think this is actually the angriest thing I have to talk about, because I think it's not being talked about enough. And it's what, so in the episode with Probably an Amazing, and I want to believe I think this was Summoning Insight, but Probably an Amazing are on the show, and they bring up, this is like a week ago now, they actually together talk about how it was like when they were both on 100 Thieves together, and what the scrim environment was like against other teams. And this is where I think there's actually there's a big culture issue in the LCS in North America that is actually ruining NA's ability to be competitive, develop talent, and thus win anything like internationally. Because we saw it with Taiwan with like Flash Wolves, tiny region, but they just like hone their shit together, and and for a while they were coming to international events and just being the Korean killers. Vietnam is doing something kind of similar, even though they're more like Chinese in terms of just their chaotic play. But I think that there's a big fucking issue when professional teams are scheduling time with other professional teams, and they're playing crazy. They're doing crazy ass plays that they'd never do on stage. It's a great, like, in the Crackdown, their interview that they had with Perks. There's a fantastic highlight where like everyone thought that G2 was gonna get trounced by, I think, Damwon Gaming or Griffin, one of the two, one of the Koreans, and they were all nervous about that. And so like Dom or Thorin asks Perks like, what made you think, or what led you all to even beat that team? And Perks was like, no, we had lost like a lot of our scrims because they just go crazy, and they would just be extra aggressive. They dive shit and just do a whole bunch of ridiculous plays. And then Perks said he's literally watched them on stage during like semis or something like that, and it was like, and so saw how much more conservatively they played. And I was like, there's no way and he just knew, there's no way we lose to this team, because the asinine level of play and the ludicrous, crazy ways that they played in scrims was not how they played on stage. And you could nuance that, like, hey, we're gonna have a crazy match in this scrim block, and this, out of the 5 hours, like, first match, let's have a crazy time, and then like the next, two are normal, and then like a crazy, and then a final normal, or something like that. Like, you could do that. But when it's a massive issue for 100 Thieves to get a scrim that's taken seriously for any amount of time is a fucking problem. Like, it's a fucking problem when everyone wants to complain about what's wrong with LCS and North America and being so uncompetitive and being just dog shit internationally and being dog shit even just watching it, when scrims aren't even taken seriously by fucking coaches and teams and whole orgs. Like, that's the biggest... I don't understand how that wasn't blown up more. And either it's because it's known and we just accept it and hope for the best. And I think that's why TL, C9, and TSM are always at the top, and they're buddy buddy, yeah, whatever, like with Jack, Steve, and Reggie. But there's something to be said about like 100 Thieves about there's something to be said about 100 Thieves last year being bottom tier and only getting shit scrims with just inting level play, and it's just a waste of everyone's time. So like the classic thing that happens in scrim scheduling is that top teams will scrim against top teams and bottom teams will scrim against bottom teams. I think TSM Cloud9 and TL always scrim each other as based on schedule and everything like that. But I think that's what's always led to them being top of the line. Like, always top three. Even now, while TL's at the bottom, like, everyone believes they're going to be top three. And I think there's a reason, like, all the teams that are always on the bottom are on the bottom is because they're never taking it seriously enough. Like, there's a classic sports play, and it's in anything that's, like, a craft with, even, like, music, performance. But you hear it most in sports, I think, is practice the way you play and play the way you practice. And there's significant truth in that of developing habits so that when you get on stage, when you get in the field, the habits are just a part of how you play. And when you have no discipline about how you treat scrims or how you go into your practice, and then you get on stage, like, I love it. Golden Glue is the big highlight here. He is a scrim god, but it's because he's not taking himself seriously. I don't think. Like it's easy to sort of guess that maybe he is not taking himself seriously while in scrims, or he's not taking it seriously enough, and then he gets on stage and he plays hyper conservative, and it turns him into just a nothing mid laner. So I think that cultural issue and the lack of taking a serious competitive mindset in North America makes any potential rookie not take their chances of LCS seriously. And it shows that orgs don't care enough, or management, or coaches, or players don't care enough to try and be competitive. So young talent doesn't care. No rookies are brought in because they're not like, even the teams aren't taking it seriously enough to try to either develop what they have or get new talent and take real gambles. The money's too high, so like the Crown issue with how dog shit Crown has been so far, they're literally pulling in Pole Belter to try to eke something out. But like, there was a big question of, do they keep Crown because of the contractual agreement, how much money they shelled out to get this guy? Like, I think there's a point. I think there was a misunderstanding of, yeah, we get the money and thus the infrastructure or whatnot, or just get the money involved and we'll be able to get top talent and really like go for it. Well, the money's here. Highest paid contracts compared to the LEC, and still nothing, you know, like the permeating culture of trying to win. So I think that major culture issue and the lack of a serious competitive nature in North America leads to double if not caring, possibly. It leads to Bjergsen being able to stay at TSM longer than maybe he should. It leads to like needing our streamers, the content creators of the community, to try to build some sort of competitive community and environment with their own tournaments to try to help the region. Like, there's more grassroots movement out of not the pro scene than in the actual pro scene. Because I can't take anyone seriously now, any of the players seriously, outside of Cloud9, that they actually are really, really trying and really working hard to be competitive, to try to win. Like, I think this was my issue with FlyQuest, is that I never registered that org as one that was designed to try to win. They're grabbing a piece of real estate and, trying not to shit on it too hard. That's like all they're doing. If that org ever wins a championship, it'll be by fucking accident. What else? focus. 100 Thieves tries, so I think they're actually in kind of good graces, though they're having a shit year, or at least a shit spring so far. Um, Golden Guardians doesn't even spend the money it has. Dig is trying, and EG I think tried, but EG just got destroyed by Cloud9, by Jack just bollocksing them with, the oral agreement, and then just, nope. This is going to work this time. So, otherwise, like, other teams just, I wish I knew which teams were just being absolutely retarded with their scrim time and disrespecting other people's time. So, until the culture issue is fixed in NA, I think that comes from multiple areas, and I think the Twitch rivals and the and Tyler One's tournament and even Clash, I think a lot of those things can help. But if the majority of the players and the teams aren't taking being competitive seriously, and they're being too soft and too concerned with like their friends, like the Griggs situation last summer, or they just aren't willing to say, you're not doing your job, get out, we'll get someone else to do it. If they're not willing to do that, to like demand viability and demand like of themselves to be better, then NA is just a retirement community with like 3 people trying to, get out. So, but yeah, so that's my thing. Oh, I just want to. Oh, my last little thing that I missed. I just wanted to actually highlight something that I don't think anyone's gonna. It's more of commentary on content creators. Just because I really love performance, and I really love League of Legends for competitive issues and narratives, but also seeing all the personalities just sort of going ham. And so, with the whole Thor and Loco blow up, and Loco just kind of appearing to be more and more of a shitty person, like there's something perpetually petty about him that just really turns at least me off in the snippets that I get from Face Check and Listen Loco, and how that fucking ended. But seeing Thorin and Dom make the crackdown together and really go in on that, and watching Thorin give Dom the reins, like, and that's clearly what Thorin does at this point. He, other than like with Monty, I think that's a more mutual thing, and I don't think there's any lording over anyone. But in the Thorin Dom relationship, I really like that, because when Listen Loco dies, it's like, well, I think a lot of us really enjoyed that as like another talk show to have, just because what big companies are going to miss out on forever is being able to have sincere, honest talk, which does involve cussing and shit talking and all that jazz, and being like unprofessional. And that's what FaceCheck gave us, and that's what Listen Loco gave us, and now Summoning Insights, like any kind of anywhere Thorin is in a way. So when the crackdown actually shows up, because like I think several of us were sitting there looking at the end of Listen Loco and looking at FaceCheck and like kind of thinking, what happens if, like, does Dom know Thorin? Like, are they cool? Like, could they? And then they do. Then you have the first episode of the crackdown. I was like, fucking let's go. And I think it's at a relative peak on having perks on, and I loved seeing that Dom was the one asking the questions. Like, it's almost like, because Dom's like well established. Like I don't think Dom needs Thorin, nor Thorin needs Dom. I think they both kind of came together, and Thorin is playing an assist to Dom's scoring on being more interviewee and getting into the realm that Thorin and Monty are in. So it's really exciting and awesome to see our grandfather of esports like taking on the best part of Face Check and putting him and them together, making a show that they both want to do. And Thorin, and I think we all know that Dom will do the job, and if he doesn't want to do it, he'll tell Thorin straight up. He's not going to pull the shit that Loco did, where Loco does not appear prepared for LEC stuff. He's does not watch near as much as Dom does. It's or even Degon. Like like Degon may be the weakest for providing commentary on the profession on the competitive and all the analysis of the game in face check, but Loco pales in comparison to Degon and Dom in terms of how sometimes how entrenched they are. It sometimes feels that Degon and Dom are way more entrenched in like the international scene and watching so many other games. Like I just don't think Loco watches enough games of LEC, of OPL, of anything, which is kind of hilarious now, especially with the LPL, you know, being on the not happening because of the coronavirus. So seeing Thorin and Dom team up, I think is just so exciting and like warms my heart, even though they're both like soulless bastards, because it's just seeing like an up and like someone that's just like seeing Dom start like if you caught early on when FaceCheck first began last year that Dom wanted to have a space to actually sit there and talk about League because it's something that he really wants to do. It's the kind of content he really wants to do. He'll do because he highlighted that um, he highlighted at one point, I think in FaceCheck, that he makes the money off of the highlight reels or off the or back in the day he made money off of doing the hype clips of awesome plays like just those clips, and he'd make that money so he could actually make the content he really wanted to, which was like learning how to jungle path and stuff like that. So I guess YouTube's just shitting on me today. Um, Whatever. So he gets to make face check, brings in Loco, brings in Zyrene. I'm sad Zyrene couldn't stay. And Degon's there to help produce it, which is great. Uh, and then I think he's getting to the next level of this talk show podcast kind of production with Thorin. And it's really cool to just, again, just to see clearly Thorin is playing the supportive role to I Will Dominate's interview with Perks, and they're actually both bringing out like really good questions after like they get through I guess the prepped questions that I Will Dominate had for Perks, and they're both and Thorin and Dom are such shit talkers anyway. Like it's they both get to be the entertaining character as well. The unfortunate thing about Loco is that the only entertaining thing he has is to be shit on. It's something weird about either his foreign background, and I think there's something that happens in socializing into a new country where you try to relate, but somehow how you present it doesn't land with the people that actually grew up with it, and it just makes it awkward. And I give credit to like anyone that's really trying to like integrate themselves and relate to their peers, in this foreign country for them. But there's something about how Loco has that issue, as well as his petty moments, his bullshit with Degon at the beginning of last week's face check that just doesn't paint him well. It just makes him cringy and not likable, and it doesn't help how you look at him, and it makes Thorin's blow up seem more legitimate and honest than Thorin's positive post Listen Loco's death tweet. I think that's a very professional thing and, forward thinking with that tweet. But Loco is just, he's not painting himself very well. And I just, so. Anyways, on that note, that'll be episode 2. YouTube shat on us, but we have the recording. So, next week. Bye.